Welcome and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question-and-answer session of today's conference. This conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect your line at this time. I would like now to turn the conference over to Arlene Dow. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, Olin. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the U.S. Census Bureau and the Local Employment Dynamics Partnership, in collaboration with the Council for Community and Economic Research and the Labor Market Information Institute, welcome to the July LED webinar, Analyzing Job-to-Job Flows in the Houston Metropolitan Area using LEHD job-to-job data, with our presenter, Dr. Pramod Sambidi. The Longitudinal Employer-Household Dynamics, or LEHD, job-to-job flows data set provides new insight to the changing demographic and socioeconomic characteristics of a region's population. By identifying the demographic of workers moving in and out of Houston metropolitan area, as well as the origin-destination information on location and industry sector changes, regional planners can better predict migration scenarios and employment structures. Dr. Pramod Sambidi is a socioeconomic modeling program manager at the Houston-Galveston Area Council. He leads efforts in the developing long-range demographic, economic, and land use forecasts for the greater Houston region. He also leads efforts in designing and developing interactive web mapping applications and tools to assist local governments, planners, researchers, and businesses in effective decision-making process. Dr. Sambidi has more than 15 years of experience in modeling regional and urban economics and data management. He holds a PhD in agriculture economics from Louisiana State University. With that, I welcome back a previous LED webinar and workshop presenter, Dr. Sambidi.
Thank you, Arlene. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your interest in the webinar. Today, I'll be talking about how LEHD's jobs-to-job data can be utilized in understanding the regional job migration patterns. Before I go into the J2J data, I would like to give you a brief overview of the Houston region's population and employment trends and cover some of the impacts related to COVID-19. The Houston-Galveston Area Council covers 13 counties and serves 134 cities. And the region has a population of 7 million people and 3 million jobs. And we also serve as the 8-county MPO region colored in red. So if you look at the historic trend of Houston population, the region's population increased from 4.7 million to 7 million in the last 19 years. On an average, natural increase accounts for 50% of region's population growth, whereas international migration accounts for 30% and domestic net migration accounts for 20%. And you can see that here, this is in 2006, the domestic net migration accounted for 50%, and that's because of Hurricane Rita, so people moving from New Orleans and Louisiana to Houston, Texas. And you can also see that during 2013 to 2015, there is a lot of migration happening. That's when the Houston energy industry is booming and Houston economy is booming. However, since 2017, the Houston energy industry is down, and that resulted in a decrease in people in migration. So you can see a negative net domestic migration for 2017 and 2018. And this is with respect to the employment. As you can see, the employment increased from 2.2 million people to 3 million people in the last 19 years. And you can see the increase in unemployment during the recession, as well as increase in unemployment during the Houston energy industry downturn. That's happening in 2015 to 2016. And here the industry breakdown for Houston. As you can see, healthcare accounts for 12%, retail trade accounts for 10%, And Houston's base industry, which is mining, accounts for 2.85%. But even though the employment is small, it is the industry that's holding the Houston economy. And as you can see, manufacturing accounts for 7.6%. So because we are in the pandemic situation, I thought it would be appropriate to share some of the impacts of COVID-19 on Houston region, because I believe that what's happening now would change the way we work in the future as well. So here is a look at the unemployment rate for the Houston during the pandemic. It crossed around 14% in the April, and now it is at around 9.9%. For Texas, it is around 8.9%, and for U.S., it is around 11.2%. This is for June 2020. And similarly, this graph kind of gives you an idea of how the office space is going to be impacted. And as you can see, the current vacancy rate during second quarter of 2020 is 21.6. That is significantly high compared to the last 15 years. And also, if you look at the absorption, it is negative. So, and we expect that this is going to continue in the near future as well. And here is some Google mobility report, and this is during the period of February 16th to March 29th. And as you can see, because of the stay-home orders and the social distancing, and some of the businesses are closed, like restaurants. So the travel is down by 45% for retail and recreation. And groceries, as you can see, there is a peak before the stay-home orders were issued, and then it went down. And similarly, the parks are down by 27%, jobs are down by 36%. However, you see an increase in residential travel, that is 13%, and these are related to the food delivery and grocery delivery services. And Google updated the data recently, and this is related to May 22nd to July 3rd. And you can see retail and recreation are still down by 15%. However, travel to groceries has increased by 7%, and also travel to parks has increased by 13% compared to the base year, which is pre-COVID-19. And now, since most of the recreation centers like gyms are closed, so people are going outdoors, like into the parks for walking and jogging. And similarly, the workplaces, travel to workplaces are still down by 56% compared to the pre-COVID-19. And the residential travel patterns has increased to 17%. So people are still buying from home, like buying online, and the food and the groceries are being delivered to their home. So this is how what's happening now. And we assume that because most of the companies are now believing that teleworking is working well, so maybe in the future as well, there will be more teleworking compared to pre-COVID-19. And this will also going to impact job-to-job migrations in the U.S. in the future. So I just noticed today that U.S. Census has released the 2018 and 2019 J2J data. And that's just happened today morning, so I was not able to update that. So what I'm going to show you is data from 2000 to 2017 and how that's going to impact the Houston region. Like how does it help the Houston region understand the migration patterns? So when J2J was released in 2018 for the metros, the data was enormous, and we were trying to understand what it is trying to tell us. So we looked at the data and come up with some questions that we are trying to answer using this data. So at what magnitude are the workers moving across industries and geographies, and what industries are attracting, what Houston industries are attracting workers from outside the region, and who are coming into the region, who are leaving the region, and what is the impact of labor mobility on earnings, and how resilient are some of our industries in the region. So all these questions we are trying to get an answer out of LEHD's J2J data, and here is what we found out. So most of the flows into the region are within Houston MSA. So job-to-job flows in the Houston MSA, within Houston MSA account for 61%, as compared to 27% job flows coming from outside Texas. Outside the region, but within Texas, and around 12% of the job flows are coming from outside Texas. So for those who move from outside the MSA, most are from other areas from Texas. So Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, and San Antonio metropolitan areas are the top 3 origin metros, making up more than 50% of job inflows to the Houston MSA. And similarly, you can see people going to Dallas and Austin and San Antonio from Houston region. So you can see that more or less the numbers are same. And this slide shows job flows to and from Houston MSA. It excludes job flows within Houston MSA. During the Great Recession, you can see the job flows went down, but however, you can still see that job inflow is greater than job outflows. And similarly, during the Houston booming period, which is from 2011 to 2015, job inflows outpaced the job outflows. But since the energy downturn back after 2015, you can see that job outflows are more than job inflows. And here is the demographics of job inflows to the Houston region. And as you can see, 57% of the workers coming into Houston MSA are 35 years old. So if you combine these two, so it's 57%. And you can also see that 62% of the people coming into the region are male compared to 38% female. And this is mainly because of the Houston industry dynamics, because most of the people coming in are coming into mining, manufacturing, and construction. So this is significant for Houston as compared to nation, where it is 53% male and 47% female. And this is for the job outflows. As you can see, the job inflows and outflows have almost the same demographic breakdowns. So all the numbers, so here around 55% are less than 35 years old, and the male and female percentages are similar, as well as the race and ethnicity, as well as education. So there is not much difference in the demographics of job inflows and outflows to the Houston economy. And here is this is 27. It indicates the time period when the Houston energy industry is down. So you can see that most of the industry job outflows dominate job inflows, except for administration, which has more inflows compared to the outflows. You can also note that even during the energy downturn, Houston is attracting more people than the people that are leaving the industry. So that indicates shows the dominance of Houston in energy industry. And here I included job flows during 2014, which is the period that Houston economy is at its peak. And as you can see, for most of the industries, job inflows are greater than job outflows, except for, I guess most of the industries, except for maybe one or two. So when the energy industry is doing well, there are a lot many people coming into the region for work in even different industries. And here is the chart showing the annual average earnings change. And as you can see, the people coming into the region earn more as compared to people going outside, workers going out of the region. So this is significant, and most of these is related to the high-paying mining industry jobs. Again, so here you can see the destination industry is mining. So workers coming from other industries always earn more when they move a job from one industry to the mining industry. For example, someone in accommodation moving into mining industry sees a 96% increase in the salary. Similarly, from retail to mining, it is 52%. So conversely, the U.S. People going from mining to other industries always see a decrease in salary. And here is an example of destination industries accommodation. And as you can see, people coming from different industries to accommodation always see a decline in wages or earnings. So for example, people coming from mining see a decrease of 28%, and people coming from like public administration see a decrease in 31% of their earnings when they move to the accommodation industry. And here we show the earnings change by age groups. So we have a tool where you can look at education, ethnicity, race, and sex as well. But here this slide shows the age group. And as you can see, ages below 25 see an increase of 25% and over $1,200 in earnings. And that's because most of the workers that are less than 25 years old are going from a part-time employment to a full-time employment. And as you can see, the demographics of above 54 see a small increase in their salaries as compared to the younger ones. And again here, the median earnings change of job flows to the Houston MSA by geography. So people, workers coming from outside Texas see a significant increase in earnings, around close to 20% as compared to workers moving within the Houston region or workers moving from outside the region but within Texas. So there is a dynamic difference between where workers are coming from and their earnings. And this is regarding job mobility, and as you can see, construction, administration, and accommodation have a lot of job mobility. So people are moving in and out because most of these jobs are contract-based and they are based on the demand. So there's a lot of job mobility in these industries. However, if you look at public administration and if you look at education, the job mobility is very small, around 2 to 3%, less than 3%. That's because these jobs are mostly secure, and so people tend to be staying longer in these particular industries. And again, so job mobility is measured by job flows divided by a total employment counts within each industry. And here we are looking at regional competitiveness, and this is measured by job flows from other regions divided by total job flows. And as you can see, the regional competitiveness of mining industry is significant. So 50% of the jobs are occupied by people coming outside the region. And that is really significant as compared to other industries. So compared to those in low-paying industries, a large portion of job inflows to high-pay industries come from outside the MSA. So, for example, if you look at college and higher, so around 36% come from non-Texas major metros as compared to people coming within Houston or moving jobs within Houston or from Texas are mostly low skill or mostly high school graduates as compared to people coming from outside Texas who are mostly educated college graduates. And similarly, we can do a similar breakdown for by age and sex. So here we are looking at resiliency during crisis. So if you look at the net job inflows to the Houston MSA by industry and recession period, you see that before recession, job inflows to construction was 30%, as compared to during recession, it was less than 10%. And once the recession is over, you can see that net job flows to construction increased to 40%. And here is similar flows to the manufacturing industry during the crisis. And so before recession, it was 40%, and during recession, it is around 25%, and after recession, it's picked up. And similarly, this is for the retail industry, and as you can see, the retail is still down because most of the retail industries are now going online. So there's a lot of less retail jobs compared to before like 2010. And here is the one industry that has thrived during the recession, and that's the healthcare industry. So during the recession, there was 30% net job loss to the healthcare, whereas during the recession, there was a little over 40%, and it went down again after the recession. And here's the percentage of job inflows by the demographics. And as you can see, mostly the African Americans were impacted by the recession, as shown by the net job flows. As you can see here, before recession, it was 21%, and during recession, it was close to 17%. And after recession, it's picked up. Whereas for other races, it is up even during recession. So here are some of the conclusions. So from what we understand, so most of the job changes in the Houston MSA are worker changing jobs within the region. However, we see an increase in the inflows from outside the region. And job flows to the Houston MSA reflect a young and racially diverse workforce. However, we see that the demographics of workers coming into the region and demographics of workers going out of the region are still the same. And in terms of job mobility, administration and construction industries have the highest job mobilities, whereas education and public administration have the least because those jobs are mostly secure. And workers from outside of Texas have a higher education and receive a higher salary increment as compared to workers moving within Houston area and workers moving from other parts of the Texas metros. And that's because most of these jobs are tied with the mining industry. And job inflows to mining industry, utility and manufacturing industries are almost always associated with rise in earnings. So we can always see an increase in the earnings when people move from one industry to either mining or the manufacturing industry. And based on the J2J data, we have realized that energy industry is still the core of Houston MSA's attractiveness. So whenever the energy industry is doing good, we see an increase in jobs, not only in the energy industry, but across the Houston economy in different industries as well. But when the energy industry is down, we see a decrease in employment in other industries as well. So Houston's economy is still a lot dependent on the energy industry. Here, so we also have an interactive report using job-to-job data from LEHD. So here are the links to that interactive report as well as the Explorer. We also have a tool that looks at the data for different years. And here's my email address, and I would like to acknowledge my staff working on these and working on other projects as well. So thank you all, and I'm open for questions now.
Operator, we're ready for questions, please.
Absolutely. At this time, we're moving into the question and answer session of today's call. If you would like to ask a question, please press *1, unmute your phone, and record your name clearly. Your name is required to introduce your question. If you need to withdraw your question, press *2. Again, to ask a question, please press *1. It will take a few moments for the questions to come through. Please stand by.
Thank you. And while we're waiting for questions, please keep your questions pertaining to the presentation. All other questions regarding the 2020 census should be directed to 2020census.gov Also, please keep your questions to one question with one follow-up question. Thank you. And while we wait, again, I had a few questions come in through the chat. One of the questions was, what factors contribute to such apparent resiliency in both these sectors?
Pardon me, can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. So it says, oh, I'm sorry, there was two parts to that. Okay. Dr. Pramod, regarding the resiliency data, can you say more about the apparent resiliency in both manufacturing and healthcare? And then it went on to say, what factors contribute to such apparent resiliency in both these sectors?
So we looked at the job inflows to the, so we summarized the job inflows to each industry during, before and after recession and during recession. And it's, so whenever there is a recession, people tend to lose jobs mainly in the base industries, whereas the population serving jobs still, I mean, we need the population serving industries still need to be continued because people need services. So that's why we see that the healthcare industry is still up, whereas other base industries like construction, manufacturing, and mining see a decrease in employment during the recession.
There's one more question from the chat, and it's regarding why are African Americans more impacted during recession than other groups?
I am not sure about that. Maybe we need to dig deep into the data. So that's something we find out, and we still need to do some research on that. And also, I think it would be better to compare if the stats are similar with other metros as well. If that's the same, then we need to figure out why it's happening, or if it's different, then why it's happening just in Houston region.
And I have one more question. With the loss of jobs in retail sector in the pandemic and rise of online retailing, what % of jobs are expected to come back post-COVID?
We are still not sure. There have been studies still going on, and there are a lot of predictions, but we will definitely see a decrease in employment, retail employment, and also, I mean, I don't have a percentage, but it will be maybe around 5%, I would say. But the thing to note is not only the retail industry is impacted, but the pandemic is also going to change the way we work. So now a lot of the businesses are, like the staff are doing teleworking, and seems like the teleworking productivity is compared to be better with pre-COVID-19. So a lot of other companies and businesses are planning on to do more teleworking than pre-COVID-19. So there will be some significant shifts in the way we work post-pandemic.
So there's more. It seems like there's more questions in the chat than on the phone right now. Can you share your thoughts about the effect of Hurricane Harvey on the local economy?
So the impacts of Hurricane Harvey. There was a lot of impact on the economy during the Harvey, especially regarding the sales, as well as there are people that are out of homes, and they have been out of homes for a long time, maybe 1-2 years. So Houston currently is working on trying to make the region more resilient to these flooding events, because the flooding has happened, the frequency of flooding has increased in the past few years. So now the Houston and Harris County and some of the local governments have taken measures to mitigate these losses related to the flooding.
And Dr. Pramod, they asked if you could put on the slide that has all of the links.
Yes. Yeah, I can share the presentation with you, and you can post it.
from Tom Crumley. Tom, your line is now open.
Hi. I was just wondering if there was your feeling if this data would project forward to where we are as of the beginning of 2020, and then do you think the kind of the profile that we're seeing would be reflected through the COVID-19, through this period of COVID-19? And I know it's really an opinion question. If you think basically the results you're showing would hold true as the different industries are affected due to COVID-19.
Right. So there were a lot of assumptions on the impacts of industries. So I had some other presentation where we looked at some of the data of impacts by industry that especially related to the sales. So the main industries that are impacted are retail, leisure, and hospitality, which includes accommodation and food services. So they're going to be heavily impacted, and however, we'll probably see an increase in employment of like delivery services. So depending on how long this pandemic goes, but it's definitely going to impact some of the businesses which won't be able to come back because of extended period of closure.
Okay. Just a follow-up. I'm in New Orleans, going through the same thing, and I'm in real estate development, and what I think, just paying attention to what's going on over in the Houston, Texas area, I would think the real issue is not only do we have COVID-19, but just also the impact of, in general, the whole energy sector, and just neither of those two seem like they could be good for the general economy of Houston, with the potential, I would think, maybe of healthcare being, potentially a bright spot, just because people still get sick or they are getting sicker. Whether the energy is good or bad, and with COVID being obviously a health issue, I would think healthcare may be a segment that keeps as many jobs, maybe the best sector to keep jobs. And I'm saying that more as a question, I guess, but it's kind of my opinion.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so even though healthcare in Houston has more number of jobs compared to any other industry, if you look at the population and if you look at the location coefficient, it is still less than 1. So there is still more scope for healthcare employment in the Houston region. However, having said that, most of the economists in Houston still think that the energy industry will be still the leading industry in the future growth of the Houston.
Makes sense. Well, thank you very much. I'm one who I'm a sole proprietor and trying to use the census data more and more just because it's a free source, but I find the data, there's so much there, it's always hard to pull information from it that I find useful. So thank you for this type of presentation. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
As a reminder, star 1 to ask a question. I'm currently showing no calls or questions in queue at this time.
I have one more question. By looking at the job flows into energy and out of energy, are we able to identify related industries in the region, similar to what we'd find from an input-output table? Could we use J2J flows to use as a regional supplement to national I/O data? I'm specifically thinking about the relationship between manufacturing and energy in Houston, where employment in the sector massively declined in regions not attached to energy, which doesn't necessarily follow the business cycle.
Yeah, as indicated in one of the couple of slides, so even when the energy industry is down, you can see the job outflows from other industries have increased compared to the job inflows. However, when the energy industry is doing good, we see an increase in job inflows compared to outflows for all other industries. So it validates the assumption that what's happening in the energy industry dictates the other industry growth of the other industries in the Houston region. So mining, manufacturing, construction, these are all tied to the energy industry, and these are the base industries. And what happens in the base industries dictates what happens in the population serving industries. So yeah, this data is really helpful, and there is still more information that we need to dig deep and to identify how the data is related to one another. So we're still continuing to do more research using this data.
Operator, are there any more questions yet on the phone?
I have no questions on this end.
Okay, great. So let's, I'll go ahead and close out our webinar at this time. So thank you for joining us this afternoon, and thank you to Dr. Sambidi for such a great presentation. Join us next month on August 19 at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when Cameron Locke presents Providing Perspective During COVID-19 Using Census Data. Until then, on behalf of the U.S. Census Bureau, have a wonderful day.
That concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.